Hi, today we are going to play a bit more with Grails and Maven. Last year I created a screencast showcasing how to integrate Grails and Maven. We created a blank Grails application, we generated the POM file, and we were able to run our Grails project through the Maven Grails goals. Today I want to discuss a bit more the Grails and Maven integration, and we are going to integrate a bit more with Maven. We can create some domain classes, views, services, and so on. So let's go back to the shell. I'm going to create a blank Grails application using Grails create app. I'm going to call that application Maven 2. I'm going to switch to that folder. So now that we have the application set up, we are going to generate a Maven POM using the Grails create POM goal. I'm going to call that package com.remirrorsolutions.maven2. This will generate the Maven POM.xml at the root of our project. So if we recall what we did last year, as soon as we have our POM file, we need to validate the project. So to do that, I'm going to use Maven Grails init. This will ensure that the Maven settings are consistent and valid. Now, we know that in Grails we can create domain classes, controllers, and so on. So what we want to do is to create a basic domain class. So let's assume that I don't know how to do that. I will use Maven Grails help to list the Grails Maven goals. If I recall, there are about 40 of them. So now I want to create a domain class. So I want to search for create domain class. And the documentation says creates a new domain class. So I want to have more details about that goal. So I'm going to use Maven Grails help. Goal is create domain class. And I want to have some detailed information about that goal. So if I list all the available documentation, I see that I can specify the activate agent, the base directory, which is set by default to the project directory. And I'm interested in the domain class name argument. And on the command line, I will specify the value that is specified in the expression. So all those arguments, all those parameters that you see below can be specified more or less as JVM arguments using -d. So let's create a domain class. So Maven Grails create domain class. I specify -d, and our argument will be domain class name. And here I'm going to use com.remirrorsolutions.maven2.user. I made a typo. The command line goes. Let's see if it will work. No, it didn't. So I had a class using capital C. I'm going to switch it to lowercase c, and everything should be fine. Let me create a Grails project inside my IDE. So I'm going to switch to the directory view. I'm going to create basic project. I'm going to save it. And now I'm looking for our new domain class, which is called user. That class is empty, so I'm going to create a very basic property, which is the name. And I'm just going to provide a toString method. That toString method will return the name. Let's go back to the shell. Now that we have our domain class, I want to be able to generate a controller. So I'm going to trust the documentation again. I'm going to run Maven and Grails help. The goal is, let's use generate controller so that we can scaffold generate controller, and I want detailed help. If we look at the list of available parameters, we see that again we have to specify the domain class name, and it will be the same as the Grails create domain class command. You're going to specify that parameter using -d. Let's run Maven Grails generate controller. Our parameter is domain class name, and our class is com.remero solutions.maven2.user. It's a bit slow because we are embedding Grails, but it's okay. Still compiling a couple of source classes. Still compiling. Let's wait. If everything goes fine, we should have two files created. One file called usercontroller.groovy, and another one for the unit tests. So let's refresh our project inside Emacs, and I'm going to try to jump to our new controller, which is user controller. So we have the standard methods that you see in all those Grails tutorials and screencast: list, create, save, show, edit, update. Now that we have our user controller, let's switch back to the shell, and we're going to try to generate some views. Let's see how we can do that. Maven and Grails help. And here I'm going to search for views. So we have generate views, so let's use that command. I'm going to invoke one more time the Maven Grails help command. The Maven goal is generate views. I want some detailed information about that command. If I scroll up, I see that we have a couple of arguments. So activate agent, base directory, and again domain class name. So here we are not going to specify domain class name as in the previous commands. We are going to use the value that is specified inside the expression, because that will be the parameter that will be eventually evaluated. Let me copy that, and we are going to use generate views goal domain class will become .remero solutions .maven2.user. And that should do it. So let's try it. If everything goes fine, we should have a couple of GSP files inside our views folder. So the standard file names will be show.gsp, list, and so on. Let's wait a bit for Maven to generate those files, and then we are going to refresh the project and switch to the directory structure to look at those files. Okay, I'm going to refresh my Emacs Grails project, and now I'm going to try to jump to a file called list.gsp. If I look at it, it has been created under Grails app, views, user, so nothing special about it. Now that we have controllers and views, let's go back to our controller, user controller. And here we notice that we are using directly domain to perform all those hibernate operations, list, and so on. In real life, we would use a service, so I will just create a service with only one method to save, and I will basically specify the save method. So let's go back to the shell. We want to learn about the command called create service, and we want some detailed information about it. So we see a couple of parameters, the service name, expression is service name. Let's go up. The environment, a couple of JVM parameters, and so on. So I'm just going to specify the service name here. And the expression that will be evaluated will be service name. So that will be what I will specify inside the -d parameter. So we'll use Maven Grails create service, and here I will specify -d service name equals com.remerosolutions.maven2.user. So that should append service at the end. So I will end up having class called user service. So let's see if everything works fine. Okay, so it looks like we had two files created, user service and user service tests. Let's refresh our Emacs project. You don't have to do it if you're using Eclipse and so on. So let me try to open user service, see what it contains. Nothing, which is fine. So here I'm going to specify a save method. And here I want to split my screen, and I will jump to our controller. So we want to be able to save some users and ideally flush the Hibernate session. So as parameter, because we are inside the same package, I will specify a user object, and here I will just return, for example, user.save flush through. In real life, I would probably not write it that way, but that's fine for the purposes of this screencast. So I save our user service. So inside our controller, I will just specify user service. Our service is a Spring Bean, and it will be wired by basically bean name using camel case conventions. So user service will be injected automatically as an instance of com.remerosolutions.maven2.user service. And inside here, I will make a small modification. I will use a user service.save, and I will provide user instance as parameter. And I'm going to save that file. So now let's go back to the shell, and we are going to try to run our application. So we generated some controllers, domain classes, one external services. We have some views. Let's use Grails run app to run our application. So the default context path will be Maven2, which is our project name. The default port will be 8080. Let's wait a bit more. It's going to compile a couple of files. Shouldn't take that much time. Still compiling. Okay, I'm going to switch to a browser window. You're not going to wait So here context path will be Maven 2. Let's go back to the shell and see what is happening. It's still not loaded. Okay, now everything is up and running. Let's wait a bit more. Okay, so now we have our controller, user controller. Let's click on that. We don't have any users, and by default we are using the H2 embedded database. So let's create a new user. We only have one property inside our domain class, which is name. I'm just going to use my own name, use only. Let's create a new user. If everything goes fine, we have one user, use only, which means that basically what we did earlier inside our service worked. Here inside the save method, we are using our service to save that user. And if we go back again to our service, we only had one method called save that is going to persist the user. So in a real application, I would probably have a couple of other methods here. I would probably not write that code exactly this way, but for our demo, this is more or less fine. Thank you for your time, and I think that in the next screencast, I want to show how to use Gorm outside of Grails. Let's say that you're building a huge application, a huge enterprise application that is split into a couple of modules. You want to have as less tight coupling as possible to the Grails framework itself. So you want to have let's say a service layer that you can reuse outside of Grails, a couple of domain classes that you may want to use outside of Grails too, while still taking advantage of Gorm. So we are going to talk about that in our next screencast. Thank you.